Hi there. In this lecture we see Rashid Nezhmetdinov playing against Ermolin in 1946 Kazan Championship. So it starts with e4. We have a Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, and now a very interesting move, f4. So this variation can sometimes achieve a semi-open f-file with an e5 break. Can you imagine this? So the ferocity of an element of the king's gambit could be achieved. Just bear that in mind, that semi-open f-file. If we have a rook on f1, whether we castle sometimes or not, that would be a dangerous rook supporting attacking squares like f7 and f8, pressure on the f-file generally. Bear that in mind. So bishop g7 is played. Knight c6 might be more accurate to put the brakes on e5. So if bishop e3, there's knight g4. And in fact, black could play e5 here. And positionally, we don't really want to take on e5. That would give black a nice square, that e5 square. If we play knight d to e2, this ends up being about even. If black could also consider e5, this situation again, it ends up being about even. So knight c6 is a good move, it seems, in this position. But black played bishop g7. Now we have this dangerous move e5. D takes is actually an inaccuracy. Knight h5, it seems, is possible here. On bishop b5 check, bishop d7, queen e2, white can claim a small edge. Okay, it's quite complicated if white wants to try to with g4. There's complications there, starting with d takes. So anyway, d takes though was played here, f takes, now knight d5. This makes things significantly worse for black, even though it looks like in principle a nice central move. It's the semi-open f-file which causes problems. The king is also in the center. If knight f d7 instead, this is plausible. e6, knight e5, this is actually plausible. White can get a small edge, but yeah, it's limited to a small edge. Knight h5 is asking for g4 under the right circumstance. Bishop b5 check first, then g4 should give white the opportunity to safely take that knight on h5. So anyway, knight d5 though was played. We have bishop b5 check, and this is very inconvenient for black. If bishop d7, we just take on d5. If knight c6, we're just taking on c6, winning material. So king f8, this is very inconvenient. A king on f8, so that semi-open f-file, like a king's gambit, is ferocious here after just castling. Even rook f1 without castling is also super strong in this position. Just to demonstrate, what we really need is just the rook fundamentally on f1 and creating the king. And in this scenario, black is in big trouble. Actually, there's a lot of trouble here for black. So anyway, casting though puts the king on g1 as well. Bishop takes e5 is played. If king g8, what would you play here? Yeah, there's a kind of underprotected piece along with the semi-open f-file. We can play queen f3, hitting d5, hitting f7. So if f5, we take on d5, winning material. If knight f6, we first protect our knight, because that knight still pins at f7 now. And then we're ready to just take on f6 there. So bishop takes e5 was tried. Bishop h6 check. Now king g8. On bishop g7, we can take on g7 and play knight takes d5. On queen takes d5, what would you play here with white for 10 points? Yeah, knight f5 check exposes an attack on the queen. And this is just a winning position for white. So anyway, so king g8 was played. Knight takes d5, queen takes d5. So this position, it looks as though, hang on, isn't white losing material? If we move this knight, we lose the bishop, don't we? It's not actually that simple at all. Actually, it's not simple at all. And in fact, there is a very strong kind of crushing move for white here. In fact, black's not in a position to try and win material here, especially after this next move. So for 100 points, what would you play here? We're controlling key escape squares, so we should be excited about this. Knight f5. It actually hits the queen. Threatens also knight takes e7 checkmate. So black tries queen c5 check. So if queen takes d1, knight takes e7 checkmate. If queen takes b5, knight takes e7 checkmate. Just get the idea. So queen c5 check is played. The bishop just drops back. Because actually, you know what? We're also threatening queen d8 here. Queen c7 protects d8. If queen takes b5, we will use queen d8 check. The knight cuts the g7 escape square. So that's checkmate. So queen c7. But now, guess what? White plays and white's game over. Yeah, this is a really great demonstration of the semi-open f-file, the rook on f1, knight h6 check. End of game. If king f8, rook takes f7 is checkmate, we're covering e8 with the bishop. If king g7, rook takes f7 is again checkmate. A great game, super cute game of this Nezhmetdinov. We get attacking inspiration from looking at his games, and it's good to try and determine what were the actual errors, inaccuracies, mistakes. Without mistakes, there is no brilliancy. So if we can try and actually understand the mistakes more, we can try and recreate the brilliancies in our own games. If we can detect those mistake patterns more. And what were the actual ingredients as well? The semi-open f-file in this variation is very dangerous, as this game perfectly demonstrates. So yes, the move f4 not to be underestimated. A bit of a tricky move. Okay, thanks so much. All comments, questions, likes and subscribes, really appreciated. Thanks so much.